Hey RC, Diana here. I'm back with another recent rotation and finally my 1000 subscriber contest, which will be at the end of the video, so stay tuned. This will be a rather short selection of some of my recent playlist stuff, and up next there will be a top 10 of the year video, which contains surprisingly a lot of stuff which I haven't shown here before, so it might be of interest for some of you as well. It contains a lot of jazz, surprisingly. There were a lot of great jazz releases this year. First album is Christopher, self-titled album released originally in 1970 on Metromedia. This is the 2014 Outsider release. Outsider is a sub-label of the Spanish Gerson label. This is the only album of the Houston, Texas-based band. They were first calling themselves United Gas, but after they moved to LA and scored a 2-year contract with Metromedia, the label suggested that they should change the name because there was already a band with a quite similar name. And so they changed their name to Christopher, which was relating to St. Christopher. Two of the band members, Richard Avitis, who's playing guitar, and Doug Warden, who's singing, playing bass, piano and recorder, were intending this to be a quite religious band, which somehow sometimes reflects on the themes. The third member, Doug Tull, who was originally the drummer, was fired throughout the recordings due to his problematic drug use and failed suicide attempt. And so the rest of the album was done with some session drummers, John Simpson and Sharon's Hand, and there was additional percussion from Ron Kramer. The image of the band was taken at the pad where the trip was filmed. The issue came with some liner notes. This album was originally released with a range of 1000 copies and the originals are pretty expensive. I would say this is just perfect psychedelic rock. There's not one bad track on this. You can hear the album throughout and it's amazing. You can hear the heavy influences of Jefferson Airplane and Cream, I would say. I think the musicians here are incredibly talented and you have great compositions, a lot of fast guitar, great lyrics, vocal harmonies, and some blues influences, and it's just an absolutely marvelous psychedelic album.
There I was, standing on the corner eating watermelon pie and drinking gin. To find the light that has been taken from you, and the light will guide you there. Take me home, wondrous woman. Take me home, find
And the next one is a recent jazz release which hasn't made it to my top 10, but if I would have done a top 15 it would be surely included, and that is Tony Burkle, Work, Money, Death, released in November 2017 over ATA Records. Tony Burkle is a British tenor saxophonist. He is based in Leeds and has been active since 3 decades. He is teaching tenor saxophone at the Yorkshire College and has been quite under the radar, I would say. He was always active and playing live gigs, but this is his debut album which he recorded this year. And this is just terrific. It contains spiritual jazz which is reminiscent of the 60s and 70s. His play sometimes reminds me of Pharoah Sanders, John Coltrane or Gato Barbieri. The album tries to span over his influences in the last 20 plus years. As I said, we have a lot of great spiritual jazz, but we have also some really groovy and funky parts which I definitely like. Tony Buckle's playing tenor saxophone and woodwinds, drums are played by Sam Hobbs, bass is played by Neil Innes, piano and organ is played by George Cooper, percussion is done by Pete Williams, and the piano on beginning and end is done by Matthew Bourne, hi-hats on Joe Hendricks, and compositions are done by Tony Buckle and the bassist Neil Innes. The first track starts off rather composed, I would say, while the second track, At Odds with the World, is incredibly funky and groovy, and my absolute favorite is the 60-minute long beginning and end, which has this kind of repetitions which totally remind me of Pharoah Sanders' works, which I absolutely dig. So yeah, I think Tony Buckle needs to be known more. I will include his Bandcamp link below, and if you like spiritual jazz, you should check this out, definitely. Tony Buckle, Work, Money, Death. Great title, by the way, and awesome artwork. The next one is Cluster and Eno, the album they made in 1977 on Sky Records. This is the German first press. I don't think I have to say that much about this ambient electronic jam. Contains a lot of my favorite people beside Brian Eno, of course, and Möbius and Rodelius from Cluster. Also Holger Czukay is playing here. It's recorded at the all-famous Conny Planck studio and has some absolutely stunning, beautiful, hypnotic and sometimes even oriental influence tracks, which are just great and highly recommended. A fun thing about this is that after they had like 30 minutes of material, Brian Eno had to leave to England again, and well, 30 minutes are just not enough for an album, so Rodelius called Asmus Tietjens and asked him if he could contribute something to it. So the track 1, which is 6 minutes long, was contributed by Asmus Tietjens and Okko Becker and has this really awesome Oriental Indian influenced vibe, which I really dig, but has apparently no contribution of Cluster or Brian Eno, but nevertheless is on the album and fits into the rest of the canon perfectly. So yeah, just a terrific album. Next one is Liquid Orbit, German-based psychedelic band. This album was released this year over in the Sony Records. This album features a female lead singer, and the tunes range from groovy funky to improvisational to trippy, fast cosmic guitar stuff, and it's absolutely great. And fun fact, Anders, the guy with whom we were traveling to the Utrecht record fair, is playing in this band. This is Anders. He is playing organ and synthesizer, Sylvia's playing vocals and flute, Andre is playing guitar, Ralph is playing bass, and Steve is playing drums and percussion. Yeah. It's a great album which I want to show. Really a lot of groovy, funky and psychic tunes, which are highly enjoyable. And I also dig the great artwork. Maurice McEntire, Forces and Feelings, released in 1972 over Denmark. Maurice McEntire was a tenor saxophonist and multi-instrumentalist and a member of the AACM. But he recorded very little after his last live album he did in 1982. I recently saw a pretty short documentary about him, which was absolutely heart-wrenching, because after he stopped recording, he continued to play tenor saxophone in the streets and subways of New York, and the documentary called Closeness, which I will link below, it's on YouTube, just follows him throughout his day, and it's really heartbreaking. And this is his second album he made on Delmark. The first one, Humility in the Light of the Creator, is highly on my want list, but it's super hard to get. This is terrific, free, spiritual jazz. Maurice McEntire is playing tenor sax, clarinet, flute and bass. Sarni Garrett is on guitar, Fred Hopkins is on bass, Wesley Chius is on drums, and Rita Omolokun is on vocals. Yeah, what makes this album stand out is the use of electric guitar. Rita has just really spine-tingling voice. First track, 15 or 16, is really beautiful and transcendental, while the second track, Sunspots, the voice of Rita is getting really aggressive and energetic. The rest of the album is free-flowing, dreamy, dark and experimental, and absolute favorite of mine. Yeah, my copy is apparently kind of like a library copy of all the stickers on it and the simple stamp on it, but yeah, it's a great album and I'm pretty happy to have it, and I hope to find the other Maurice McEntire soon. Coconut oil, make a good lotion, fruit from the night, music is the healing force, meditation. And the last one for today is another blues album, Junior Wells, Southside's Blues Jam with Otis Spann, Buddy Guy and Louis Myers. Released in 1970 over Delmark as well. Junior Wells was a Chicago-based blues singer and harmonica player. He's joined here by Buddy Guy on guitar, Louis Myers on guitar, Otis Spann on piano, Ernest Johnson on bass and Ferro Below on drums. Junior Wells, I think he's most known for his album Hoodoo Man Blues. The album tries to capture what any listener would have heard on a Monday night at the Teresa's Blues Bar and has this really great live vibe. This is one of the last recordings of Otis Spann before he died of liver cancer. And it's just a great example of Chicago blues. I absolutely love the captivating voice of Junior Wells, which offers just this swirl and range of emotions from agony to despair and cries and wailing, and it's just astonishing. So yeah, a really raw and emotional album, I would say, which I really dig. Junior Wells, Southside Blues Jam.
I think you like the way my music sounds. Look at that. It had me so bad sometimes. I have to fight for my sleeping night. You know that money water than a hospital, and you can't even hardly get around. And now that's what make me feel that I wanna fight tonight. All alone. Somebody better come here, Junior Wells. No.
That's it for today for the records. On to the contest, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, it's time for my 1000 subscribers contest. I just want to thank you all for making this channel fun to do, for your views, contributions, comments and everything, which make me really happy. And so I just thought I would like to start a contest. The contest will be up, I think, until the middle of January or something like this. So to enter the contest, I thought it would be interesting if you could make a rather short video where you show me your top 3 albums you have listened to this year. This means it's not necessary that the albums were released this year. It's just like I want to see which albums have influenced you the most this year, which albums were played the most this year, which was the album which you bought this year that meant the most to you. Something like just albums that were important to you in 2017. Doesn't matter if the album is from 2017 or 1969, it's just should have mattered to you in this year. If you do a video response to this contest, please link your response below so I can make sure to just see every response. And yeah, on to the prizes. I thought it would be nice to do 3 winners, and so the third place gets a copy of the Liquid Orbit record, which I've shown because I think it's a great album and I would love to see more German-based music around the world, so you get a copy of the Liquid Orbit album. The second place gets one of my favorite albums this year, the new Sounds of New Summer, La Gran Bellezza 2LP album, which I have shown in my Meet the Label series. Just great psychedelic space, new crowd rock. So yeah, it's also an album which should just get around the world. And the first prize will get a coffee painting of an artist of his choice. So just name me a musician and I will paint you a coffee painting, which will then look like something like this. Same size, I guess. Oh, to enter the contest, just show me 3 albums which you particularly like this year, no matter when they were released. And yeah. Really looking forward to the responses. I hope you liked the selection of records today. Leave me something in the comments.